I was recently asked why young people are walking around with such a gloomy, somber look on their face. Why young people suffer from anxiety, whereas before a young person didn't know what anxiety was. Anxiety was for a married man who had a job and kids, and he was kind of worried about bringing, supplying for the family. He would get anxious, or he would, have problems, try to make it to the end of the month. But a lad who's in third year really doesn't have much to be anxious about. He gets up in the morning, he goes to school, he's got his classes, he goes home, he's got his sports. Like, how come there's so much anxiety, mental health, sadness, depression amongst the youth? And so it's coming from someone who was elderly, and it was a surprising phenomenon. And I think it should be a surprising phenomenon, because young people aren't supposed to be suffering from that right now. And I said, well, look, it kind of makes sense to me, when you think about how things work. Take plants, for example. The plants that we have at our home were all dying before we got our new member in the community, Javier. He's up in the choir. He's a Spanish lad, and he does a very good job taking care of the plants. I do a terrible job. Either I give him too much water, I put him in a breezeway, or I don't understand the plants, and so they tend to die. Whereas Javi knows where to put them, what to do, So when you see the plant that's withering, it's either too much water, too little water, too much shadow, too much sun. Something's wrong with it. And you can see it. It's not receiving what it's supposed to be receiving. Or the car. You can't put petrol in a diesel car. It doesn't work. You can't put diesel in a petrol car. You can't put your cutlery in the microwave. You see, these are all things that just don't work. Certain things need certain things to work. And a lot of people, you'd ask about the young people, well, if you can see them from the outside, there's symptoms of something's not working. They're not receiving what they're supposed to be receiving. They're not living what they're supposed to be living. They're broken. They're broken. And so as a priest, when you deal with so much brokenness, and you can get an eye for brokenness, and you understand brokenness, you can see it. And so if there's darkness, there's anxiety, there's stress, there's problems, there's depression, there's mental health, something's not working. And when you talk about the 10 Commandments nowadays, people become up, for some reason, they're all alarmed. And for some reason, they're telling the priests that we're not allowed to be talking about the 10 Commandments. Be careful. John Henry Newman said this, that when the world starts dictating what the church can say, be careful, because the Antichrist is present. When the church starts looking at the world for instructions, be careful, because the church is in the times of the Antichrist. John Henry Newman said that. And I've seen it so many times where we're being blocked off, we're being shut up, we're being told what we can talk about, what we can't talk about, the 10 Commandments. The amount of times I've been told there's certain commandments that I'm not allowed to mention as a priest. And then we're wondering what's wrong with the kids. And what's wrong with not-so-kids? We're broken. We're putting things inside of us that aren't supposed to be inside of us. We're putting the petrol in the diesel, or the cutlery in the microwave. And people are saying, well, look, I'm free, I can do whatever I want. I don't want commandments. God commanded me, thou shalt and thou shalt not. You see, God said before he gave the commandments, I am a jealous God. Jealousy in the sense that I'm so in love with you that it makes me jealous when I see that you're in love with something that's going to hurt you and damage you. This happens in relationships. When you see someone you love so much go down a path that you know is going to be destructive, it hurts you. It's a good jealousy. He's jealous because he just wants us. Just you. I've created you singular. I just want you. And I'm hurt when I see that you're going off and you hurt yourself. So we do have to say this. So what are we putting inside of us that's not working? This is where we have to examine our conscience right now. When you go through the 10 Commandments, they can get very particular. And they're not just abstract either. We have to go through them slowly. Examine the conscience. Why? Because as we saw in the gospel, this heart of ours is a temple. And Christ entered with the whip in the real temple, and he drove out the people who were making the house of God a den of thieves and making money off of what should have been sacred. He's flipping tables over. Our Lord would be in jail if he was to come back nowadays. I mean, they would have locked him up. He would have been Well, they probably would have crucified him again, flipping tables over and telling him to get out of the temple. You shall not turn the house of my father into a house of exchange. And he says the same thing right now for our hearts. It says he was burning for zeal. It said the zeal devoured him. Look at the cross. The jealousy and the zeal that he has for us devoured him in the cross. And so maybe he didn't show up with a whip on Calvary, but he was whipped. He was flogged. He was slapped. They pulled his beard. They punched him in the face. They spat on him. He's devoured. He's consumed. He's expired, thinking about us, bringing us back. Because he's worried for us. He's worried for our temple. I'm worried for the generation that we're being brought up with right now. How can a young person nowadays escape from the noise that's coming from these cell phones? How is this going to be possible? And I say it to parents. Parents, do not be so naive to give your children the cell phone at a young age. Do not be so naive. And if they're nagging at you, like, all my friends have them, you're such a bad mom, how can you do this to me, you hate me. I've heard this. What's going to happen in 10 years now when they do the studies and they see what happened to this generation? And they're going to come back at you 18, 20 years old and they say, how could you have done that to me? Giving me that at such a young age. And you're going to be hearing it in 10 years. It's better to hear it now, protecting them, than to hear it in 10 years when we see the damage. You see, we don't know how they're going to be turning out. It doesn't look good. There's so much noise, there's so much addiction, because these people are buying and selling our attention span. They're buying and selling our attention, and we're naive to that. You see, we're turning the temple, we're turning our spirit, we're turning our heart into a marketplace for the world, and the world's all over it. They're devouring it. But he's not going to let that happen so quickly, because he's devoured for us, and he doesn't stop at anything to win us back. So we have to come back to him. We have to make the effort, and we have to say, Lord, come into my temple. The fact that we're human beings, and I'm saying this the first, the fact that we're human beings, we have attachments, we have disorders, we have concupiscence, we have sin, we have it in there because we're fallen. We have to go back to him in the confessional. We have to get on our knees and say, my Lord and my God, I've sinned against you who are all good. Look what I've done, which was evil in your sight. As Mother Teresa said, if a little girl were to hit her dad, it wouldn't hurt him physically. But what goes on in the dad's heart when he's got his little girl slapping him in the face? That's what Mother Teresa said. That hurts him. Does it hurt him physically? No. But the fact that it's coming from my little girl, that hurts him. And we're not on our knees and we're saying, Lord, I've offended you, I've hurt you. You who are so jealous for me, for my attention, for my life, and I've given my attention to the world. I've given it over, Lord. I haven't been thinking about you. Look what you've done. You've been devoured for me, and I don't even give you anything. Lord, I'm sorry I've sinned. With my eyes and what I've looked at, what I've let enter into my heart, and my ears, what I've listened to, my actions, and what I haven't done. This is an empty church. Do my neighbors know that you are present in the Eucharist? Do my neighbors know that they can get all their mental health in order when they get a good confession? Free from sin, safe from all distress. Free from sin, safe from all distress. We're disturbed and distressed, and we don't know where to go. Maybe I have somebody in my life, my coworker, my neighbor, somebody who's close to me, doesn't have a clue. They think they know what the church is because they've been listening to it and they've had a chip on their shoulder about what the Irish church has done. But they don't know that they have a God who's devoured in jealousy and jealous love for us. They don't know that. But bring them in. Do something. Give them something. What I've done and what I've failed to do, Lord, what I failed to do as a baptized Catholic. Loads of stuff here. So we're going to ask the Lord now on the third Sunday of Lent for a change of heart. I don't want these distractions, this sin and these money changes in my heart, Lord, in the temple. Come in, and if it has to be with the scourge or with the whip, if it's embarrassing, if it hurts, well, let's praise be God. As long as you're in there, and what's in there right now is not, that shouldn't be. Amen.